From AZTV's Phoenix location in the London Center, it's the Pat McMahon Show.
Hey, happy Thursday to you. We've got some fascinating people on. Traveling the world, taking care of you, the audience. Going to give away stuff today, and make sure that you continue to be entertained and intrigued at least for an hour. The hour is called the Pat McMahon Show. The location is AZTV, and on this particular day, called February the 10th, what we're doing is we're going to take you to that part of the Middle East that seems to have been constantly in turmoil, tumult, probably as long as there has been written history. Somebody has been walking around in the Middle East slapping somebody else. And once there were names attached to the areas, at least in our lifetimes, it's been Israelis, Palestinians, Palestinians, Israelis. Could there be a light at the end of a very, very long tunnel, now with the old leadership reaching out to the new leadership, Palestinian leadership? We're going to have somebody who lived many, many years in Israel, who has been here before, who is an author of a book about Israel and that conflict, and we're going to be talking to him about whether he, in fact, is optimistic at all about whether these initial cursory peace talks will turn into something more solid and long-lasting. We visited not long ago with our first guest. By the way, before we introduce him officially, I should tell you that Timothy Ben is out there right now waiting to make sure that it is official, that he is the winner of a family 4-pack of tickets. ASU, UCLA, great basketball going on at Wells Fargo Arena this Saturday. You get a chance to go. And congratulations. Thank you very much, Timothy, for watching, because you were able to identify Greg Norman as the shark, the great white shark from the other side of the planet, almost on the other side of the planet, Israel. And I was just looking at this book, The Future of Israel, happens to be written by Devin Sper, our guest now, our guest in the past, when we've wanted to find out at least his perspective on what's going on in that troubled area. So what I hear, Devin, almost all the time, ever since the meeting, which was historic, there's no question about it. I mean, it's better that they met than they didn't meet, and just throwing rocks at one another, that Ariel Sharon and Mahmoud Abbas got together, shook hands. That in itself is a big deal if you've been killing each other. But I also hear we shouldn't get too optimistic. You lived in Israel for how long?
For 10 years.
How do you feel about it?
Well, it's the fact that they shook hands is not the first time. We've had many summits, we've had many speeches where we hear nice words from the Palestinian side. The question is whether or not in the coming days, literally in the coming day perhaps, because there was a missile attack today on Israel again. 25 missiles fell on Israeli towns. And so I think we're going to know the answer to this sooner rather than later. Okay,
but missiles different than rocks, different than just shoulder-held grenade launchers. When you're talking about missiles, multiple missiles, that has to come from a pretty organized unit.
That comes from Hamas. I believe they've already taken credit for it. And they're openly challenging the ceasefire in doing that, and they're openly challenging Abbas's authority. So the real question is Abbas going to side with Hamas, or is he going to side with the civilized world?
What do you think?
That's a hard question. If you would ask me that question tomorrow, I'd know the answer, because we're going to see within 24 hours. I would have to reserve judgment. It really depends on his actions. The words are meaningless. We've heard words before. We've had, I don't remember, something like 30 ceasefires, all of which have broken down. However, in the past, we had Arafat, and now we have a new leader. So you're right. There's a reason to feel that it may be different. We're going to know very quickly.
How is Abbas different than Arafat?
Well, historically, he's not that much different. He founded Fatah together with Arafat in the 70s. He served time in Israeli prison for terrorism. He's a man on record for denying the Holocaust and for denying that there was ever a temple on the Temple Mount. So his history is not different than Arafat's. The hope is, and in fact in his election campaign leading up to his recent election, his rhetoric was similar to Arafat's. He called Israel the Zionist enemy, the same sort of rhetoric in Arabic. The hope is that was simply campaign rhetoric to get elected with a very radical population, and that he has changed. And his actions in the next few days, in the next 24 hours, are going to tell us the answer. If he confronts Hamas, if he dismantles Hamas, then we know that we have a different partner. If not, we know we're going the same route again.
Now, we'll acknowledge the fact that Devin Sper, not only in our conversations, but also clearly in the book, The Future of Israel, you are unflinchingly pro-Israel. But when it comes to your look at the Palestinians and the Palestinian demands, when it comes to a ceasefire and its possibility, what would be the advantage of Abbas siding with Hamas, or does Hamas, this terrorist organization, I think they would probably acknowledge the fact that they are a terrorist organization, whether they use the word or not, but responsible as they have been for so much violence, do they represent the majority of Palestinian people?
Not according to the recent election in which Abbas got over 60%. Now, it's true Hamas didn't participate, but if you don't participate in an election, we don't know if you have support. And we have to wonder if you do. So Abbas is the elected leader. He has the authority. He has the means. He has 60,000 armed men. He can enforce a ceasefire if he wants to. He has done so in northern Gaza. These missiles were launched from Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, where he has not yet deployed his troops. So he right today has the ability to decide whether he's going to confront Hamas. Up till now, he said, I'm going to co-opt them into the Palestinian leadership. That would be a mistake. If we see him go that route, he's going the route of Arafat.
Well, if he did that, then actually all we would do is retrogress back to the worst of periods in the last couple of years.
Exactly. The real question comes down to whether Abbas sees Hamas as his partner or Israel and the United States and the rest of the world as his partner. And he right now has to make a choice.
But again, I go back to what would be his advantage siding with Hamas against the rest of the world?
His life will be forfeit if he does not. They've already killed 2 of his bodyguards. They could probably kill him at any time. There is no real law and order on the Palestinian side. So there's whether or not he's personally brave. And secondly, the question is whether he wants to retain power and popularity among the Palestinians, or whether he's a real leader who's not going to follow the mob, but is going to lead it somewhere else than it's been led by Arafat, which is towards peace, towards reconciliation. If he shows that kind of leadership, he goes out in front of his people and says, this was a mistake, and for our own benefit, we're going to go in a different direction, then he will go down in history as a leader, and he will achieve something for his own people.
Okay, but I'm going to press you. So when we get back, I want to find out what you think 24 hours from now the headlines will be. And after all, this is a gentleman who spent a number of years in Israel, enough so and opinionated enough about his experience there and looking at that part of the Middle East from his perspective here, that he wrote a book, The Future of Israel. His name is Devin Sper, and we'll be back in just a moment. By the way, since the last time Devin Sper came on as a respected author of The Future of Israel, and with all of the attention that we gave to his background as an Israeli, he had to confess that the cover is a phony. Look at this, for crying out loud. Where was that done?
That was done, that's an Arizona mountain, I believe.
See, when it comes to our audience, we hide nothing, Devin. And besides that, the Arizona Visitors and Tourism Bureau is delighted. Although, the thing is that it could be Israel. So much of Arizona looks like that part of the country.
Very much so. The first time I flew into Arizona on business, the Red Rocks, I thought I had arrived in Israel. It's something that attracted me to Arizona right away.
So let's go back to Israel.
Okay.
You're here in Arizona. You're looking at what's going on over there. I'm assuming that you have contacts with people in different parts of the world that allow you to come to the conclusion that in 24 hours, Mahmoud Abbas, the new Palestinian leader, will...
Let me just say, first of all, I'm usually a very opinionated person, and here I would hesitate because the situation is unpredictable. But if you press me for a guess...
We're pressing.
I would say, based on his history and his background, he's again going to try to co-opt Hamas rather than confront them. And that will be a mistake. He's going to try to convince them to have what he calls in Arabic a hunda. Hunda means temporary ceasefire. And that is the term they've been using up till now between the establishment and Hamas and the terror organizations. He's going to try to get them to keep their own hunda. In the hunda itself, in not confronting and dismantling the terrorist organization, he's made a tactical error. And it's going to become a strategic error unless he does that tomorrow. And I find it hard to believe he's going to do that.
What is so unusual, though, about any international leadership figure asking for more time?
Every day, missiles fall in Israeli cities and people are killed. Israel is the more...
And Palestinians, too, by the way.
No, there are no Israeli missiles falling on Palestinian cities.
I didn't say missiles. I was saying that Palestinians are killed, too. And they are human beings. And sometimes we tend, in this country, to think only in terms of the suicide bombers and the treachery of that, and not the fact that the Palestinians have lost, something like 3,000 people.
Yes, but I don't accept a moral equivalence between terrorists who kill innocent people and the innocent people who defend themselves against terrorists, any more than I would accept a moral equivalence between the people who died in the World Trade Center and the people who killed them. So I don't accept that analogy.
Except for the fact that all of the Palestinians who have been killed have not been soldiers and have not been members of terrorist organizations. They have been bystanders, like many of the Israelis who have died.
No, the Israelis who died were not bystanders. They were targeted by the terrorist organizations because they were civilians. The people who were killed by collateral damage were not targeted, and of course their death is unfortunate. But that is not the same thing as targeting civilians. There is a moral difference.
You know, there are times that I think Americans who have been and continue to be pro-Israel and pro-democracy in the Middle East and pro the economy of Israel. You, before the show was starting, you were talking about the fact that that is an improved situation economically in Israel. So many things to admire. But there still seems in conversation to be, and sometimes in conversation with you on the radio and television, an inclination to never find error or never find fault in Israel, that it's a black and white situation.
Well, my book is largely about the fault that I find in Israel, which may be from a very different point of view than the conventional wisdom. I think they don't stand their ground enough. I think they don't have a strong enough position. So I'm very critical of Israel, but not from the point of view of their humanity, which I think is exemplary, considering the situation they're in. I think they've gone far beyond what we have in, for example, Iraq, and what we did at Hiroshima, and what we did at Nagasaki. And Israel needs to be judged by exactly the same standards as we judge ourselves, and as other countries. You cannot judge Israel in a vacuum. You cannot judge Israel in a morally pure vacuum. Israel is a country operating in a hostile region where the enemy pulls no punches, and under those circumstances, they've been remarkably careful.
Are you in favor of a Palestinian state?
Yes, just not on our land.
Who is our, and who is determining what is our land? Isn't that the ancient argument?
I think at this point, after trying to compromise for 100 years and finding no real will to compromise on the other side, that decision is solely up to the Israeli people. It's not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not up to the quartet. It's not up to the UN. It's not up to the State Department. The Israeli people need to pick a border, and I advocate, that's one of my criticisms, that they haven't done that. They need to choose a border, declare it, and defend it.
What about the Palestinian people?
The Palestinians have lost their right to decide the border because they violated all of their previous agreements and viciously attacked Israel, conducted a campaign of terror that's absolutely unprecedented, killed 1,300 Israelis in the last 4 years. And when you do that and you lose your right to negotiate.
How do you feel about Sharon's move in the last few months?
You talking about the disengagement from Gaza?
Mm-hmm.
I'm strongly opposed to it. Would be another criticism of mine of the Israeli policy. I think it achieves nothing. If the Israeli troops, actually we're only talking about a few settlers being moved from their homes, that doesn't stop the next missile. That does nothing to change Hamas's attitude. That in fact encourages them, demoralizes the Israelis. To me, it's a canard. It's an attempt to make the Israeli people feel there is a plan when in fact the government of Israel has no long-term plan.
And finally, with very little time left, Devin Sper, if your prediction, difficult as it was for you to verbalize it, but in 24 hours, if Abbas disappoints you in attempting to compromise in some form with Hamas, then what should Israel do?
Do you mean if Abbas does the opposite, if Abbas in fact confronts Hamas?
No. If he once again attempts to reach some kind of a compromise with Hamas and asks for more time,
then we will know that the fake peace process is still a fake peace process. And what I advocate in the future of Israel and what I advocate in speeches is that Israel needs to declare her border unilaterally. She needs to get on with building her state as she did very nicely prior to the whole disaster of Oslo. If there is no partner on the other side, then you simply need to get on with your life. Israel, being the stronger party, has the ability to do that.
I think you'll find that those opinions are stated just as strongly in his book, The Future of Israel. Devin Sper,